I want to know what the hell is going on.
Welcome to Screen Share and Chill, a podcast about movies. It's all very dramatic. I'm Kelley.
I'm Keith.
Yeah, so we just watched the recap for Dune 1, because we've both seen it before, but we just wanted to refresh it. And a couple of thoughts coming right out of that recap that I wanted to share with you right now is, first off, their eyes are bluer in the first movie than they are in the second movie. I mean, I was just watching the second movie a little bit before we recorded, and their eyes are still blue, but they're not like glowing blue like they are in Dune 1. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I don't know. There was some scenes where they were pretty damn blue in part 2.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
like
always
blue. Yeah,
or if it's just a lighting thing. I don't know.
Yeah, right on. The other thing I noticed is that this movie, that watching the recap reaffirms what I felt watching the first movie, that this is not a movie. That's part of the reason why I didn't really want to do an episode of just Dune 1, because it's not a movie on its own. It's a cliffhanger.
Well, yeah, it's a movie, but you definitely feel the lack of resolution. It's like the first act and a half of a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was entertaining, don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up on Star Trek and Best of Both Worlds, where half the episode leaves you hanging for fucking 4 months till you find out if Picard dies or not. But so the first movie, like, it definitely, like, even just watching the recap, he's like, so we find out that they can ride worms, and that's where we leave it. And I'm like,
right. It literally ends right where you're like, let's fucking go, you know?
Yeah. Which I guess is what you want for a first part, is to really make you excited for a second part. But there was no doubt in my mind. They I don't know if they called it part 1, but it was completely, it exists as a trilogy, at least.
Well, a duology, because this is the full story. This is like the first full novel with part 2.
Yeah, but even the way they end part 2, like with, and thus began the war, you know, like it tells you that you're gonna have more stuff coming. Like, yes, this rise to power is very interesting, but wait till you see what happens next.
Sure, but that's the story. Is his rise? That's the original Dune.
Yeah.
Is Paul's rise to power, and this movie, when you end, you feel the satisfaction of a complete story. That was my main complaint with the first one, is there's no resolution, and you have a great setup, and it's right where things are about to pop off, and you're going to start, okay, what are the consequences of these things happening? What is Paul going to do? And you don't get any of that for like 2 fucking years.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in the era of prestige TV, like well into it. So maybe that's clouding my judgment. But every time I see a book, taken into movie form, it always makes me think that this would probably work better as a TV show or like a long form series, like Game of Thrones having 10 hours to tell a book story. That's okay. That makes sense. It feels like you may be leaving some things out of Game of Thrones when you translate that to a 10-hour series. But with 10 hours, you can at least hit on all the side stuff without feeling like you're just quickly touching on something and moving on, or completely skipping it all together, that kind of thing. So maybe this would have worked better overall as a TV series, because it felt like they're just trying to fit a lot in, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Dune is very dense, and I feel like together it does a great job of making this story. But and like the first one was really good. I was really into it. Great world building, fantastic cinematography. Denis Villeneuve is like one of my favorite directors / cinematographers.
I always pronounce it Villanueva.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I don't know. That's where my brain wants to. My brain wants to call him Dennis Villanueva, but everybody's like Denis, so I'm like, all right, Denis Villanueva. But who knows? Yeah, that guy, the director of Dune and Dune 2.
Yeah, I'm just some yokel from the South, man. But he did Blade Runner 2049, and he's done cinematography before he was a director on all kinds of like major movies, and he's great. I call his style visual volume, because I'm just whenever I'm watching his stuff on a big screen, I'm just like laying back, and it's like a big, you know, crazy wide shot, and the music goes and it's just like washing over me, you know, and it's pretty great.
I don't think we're neither one of us are spoiling too much. That this movie was awesome in a lot of those ways. And you can tell, like, I remember seeing the story that the director had his first storyboard of this movie shortly after he finished the book when he was 13 years old. So it's been sitting in his pocket for over 10 years. And I can imagine if any of us got a chance to create a project on this scale after getting training in it, after dreaming about it for a decade plus, like I have things like that in the back of my mind that I would love to do blank. And I've been thinking about it so much that if you gave me the chance, that you might not be what you like, but I guarantee you there's passion behind it. And you can tell that this movie, this person, everybody involved with this, they really like what they're doing. There's a lot of passion behind this, and everybody gives a shit. It feels like that's the music, the effects, the cinematography, the direction, the acting. Each character has such like a lot of, I mean, almost every character. Ironically, the one that has the least amount of depth is kind of Paul, but but we'll get there as we go. So yeah, it really makes me want to watch the David Lynch's, I think 83 or 82 version again, which I enjoy, but like it's one of those things where it was obviously between watching these two and then knowing that what that movie is like, it's not a movie is not enough to contain this, a single movie. And the effects weren't there, like their shields they look like Tron, like very basic polygonal stuff. Big, huge squares. It's a product of its time. I thought it was, it's pretty visually fascinating. It did its own, that original Dune had its own fan base going since it was made. It's brought a lot of people to Dune. Sting, Sting in a diaper. Yeah. Like I grew up watching a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, and every once in a while there would be a fantasy or sci-fi movie from the 80s that just didn't quite vibe with me, and David Lynch's Dune was one of those. Like, I love Star Wars. I enjoyed Star Trek, even though Star Trek as a small child, I didn't quite get it as much, but I still enjoyed watching the space battles, and Kirk and Spock seemed kind of cool, that kind of thing. But watching Dune, I checked out of that movie like I was a 5-year-old going to dissertation on economic structures or something. Well, like I did not care about that movie at all. To tell you how good of a job that original movie did in actually telling the story, which is not the greatest, is that I really didn't know most of the nuts and bolts of what I got from watching, these two new Dunes. Like, I knew there was Spice, I knew there was the Harkonnens, and I knew there was Paul and all that. But in having watched these now and put them together, there's a whole lot of Dune DNA remixed and straight into Star Wars that I have a new appreciation for, because I was not aware of, I don't know, I'm sure that has to have been discussed, like, ad nauseum, but it's a new conversation to me. I would love to maybe look up if George Lucas has admitted to any of that, because let's fire off the similarities real quick, because we got desert planets, galactic empire, we have, a noble house that falls from a strike from within, right? It's kind of like the Jedi Order, and all that's left is, one who needs to he joins up with the rebels to fight the Empire. But it's not just hero. Yeah, it's not just Luke, because it's also Anakin, because he's having visions of the future about this future that he does not want to come to pass, and so everything that he does in his effort to not have that happen brings him closer to that. And we go from nice young lad to terrible dictator. I remember when you messaged me and said that Anakin and Paul Atreides had a lot of similarities, and the first thing that came to mind was but sand. Sand is a big difference between the two of them. Yes. They have very strong opinions on both sides of that aisle. So. Yes, very, very, very true. That's George Lucas is like, they'll never be able to tell that it's from Dune. Yeah, that's his secret. That's his secret 11 herbs and spices is, I'm going to make Paul Atreides, but but he's going to hate sand. It's going to be a defining characteristic of his personality. So much that sand people, they're all gone. All of them. The women, the children, every one of them, just get fucking rid of him. That'll be his start to Descent, is him just killing people because they're sand people. That's how much he hates it.
I mean, there's even the fucking chosen one prophecy. You know what I mean? Like, it's remixed. It's different enough, but goddamn.
But then, how much of that was just the hero's journey? You know what I'm saying? Like
exactly.
The hero's what was it? The power of myth, Joseph Conrad or whatever.
He pulls the sword from the lake and it's bequeathed onto him. You know, it's
and that's why it's interesting that in this version, which we'll get to as we go, but in this version, Paul Atreides does not want to be the savior of the Fremen people. Whereas from what I understand from book readers, now I didn't read the book. Did you?
No, not yet, but I think I'm going to now.
Oh, I heard it's a slog to read, but yeah, God bless and Godspeed to you if you're going to try it. But the difference that I've heard of in the book between the two Pauls, is the Paul in the book is once he gets committed to it, he is 100% behind himself. He believes himself as the Hizaj Quadrach or whatever it is, and he thinks he's the savior of the Fremen people, and he never kind of backs down from that. Whereas in the movie, we see that he fights against that for very Anakin-like reasons. So then you can almost say that maybe Anakin was influenced by Paul. Yeah. And now Paul is influenced by the new Anakin. So Paul has influenced himself, has influenced himself.
Tell me, upwind, isn't it possible?
So let's get into the movie proper. It basically starts with a recap, just kind of telling us the story through the Emperor and his daughter in their courtyard. But what really opens us up is Paul laying on the sand and psychically speaking to his unborn sister.
Yeah.
And the Harkonnens are it looks like they're coming to retrieve. Are they coming to retrieve a body of their own? Is that what this is?
I took it as they were investigating somebody that was supposed to check in. Like that was a scout that was supposed to check in, and they were dead. So, and another thing that was real quick, I could tell the difference in different subcultures in our world is that when a few people that I know watched this movie for the first time, in that opening scene, they were like, "Oh, Florence Pugh is in this," and I said, "Who?" I don't know who that is. I mean, she seems very talented.
She's in Midsummer, and she's in I think she's in Black Widow.
Okay, I've seen Midsummer, but and she looks familiar, but like I didn't recognize her as like a superstar or anything like that. Whereas to some people, it was like, oh wow, that's it's like a selling point that Florence Pugh is in this. I was like, all right, cool, yeah, she seems nice, so cool.
Also, skipping ahead, one of my favorite current actresses, Anya Taylor-Joy, plays the talking fetus in question, pretty much.
We've done a few movies of hers through the movie night, even the pre-podcast days, and I'm a big fan. And I've even brought up before that I'm not sure how much of my fandom comes from the fact that she's incredibly talented, which there's no denying it. But I also have like a big crush on her. I think she is so pretty, and it's hard for me to properly judge how, you know what I'm saying, the shucks she's pretty goggles are on.
She's very pretty, and she's in good, cool movies that I like. It's like a double whammy.
Yeah, and she doesn't play like mewling characters. Her characters a lot of time have a little bit of an edge to them or a little bit of depth to them. Like the one that I keep coming back to mentally as I'm talking about her is The Menu. That was so much fun to watch.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anyway, so the Harkonnens, which that's another thing that you pronounce their name. I noticed they pronounce their name both ways in the movie. So like I guess you could go either way with it, which I'm used to going both ways.
Hey.
But the Harkonnens stumble upon their fallen comrade, and we watch them one by one kind of get sniped from the top.
Yep, slaughtered by the desert rebels. And like, if it isn't obvious, this is a big allegory for like oil in the Middle East.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
spice in the ground, oil in the ground.
That's painted on its face. I'm sure nobody needs us to tell them that, but like, just in case.
Just in case somebody was out there going, are these guys going to ignore the obvious? Oh, no, this is definitely, it's all about colonialism and taking over the Middle East from Western powers and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, apparently, I guess they've just been raiding, right? I like saying Harkonnen better, so that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Harkonnen throughout.
Yeah, I mean, you say it however you want to say it. It's interesting to me that either way is right. Because to me, Harkonnen sounds more evil. It's darkening, like
Right.
I don't know, but that's it all works out.
So
the Harkonnens,
they take out their sort of little scouting party and go back victorious to their little hideout. Meanwhile, one of the first things where I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Just the intensity of this is the Dave Bautista, I forget his character's name, but he's like Raban, yes. Raban in charge of Arrakis. What is this? Let me find the scene, what his underling says to him. As you should get some rest.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And he like fucking smashes his head, he like Kylo Ren's out on him. And
for somebody suggesting, self-care is important, my lord. Fuck self-care!
Right,
I don't need therapy. Somebody bring me some drywall.
Yeah. Yeah, and a Monster Energy drink.
I mean, and they picked such a good guy. I mean, from what I understand, Dave Bautista is like a super chill guy and definitely not like an alpha right-wing douchebag or anything like that. So he seems like a pretty decent guy. And I love the fact that he's embodying like pure toxic male and the insecure variety, as we see as the show goes on. And it's completely a facade. Like he's got big, huge muscles, but he's got a tiny little...
Well, that certainly calls for a dirty. Daddy, chill.
Tiny little heart for bravery.
Mm-hmm. Sure, Jan.
One of the most interesting thing about this movie is all about the whole, I guess the conversation on faith, as many movies find themselves going to and discussing. But from the way I understand it, the legacy of the one who will come from off-world and lead the Fremen to victory is something that was planted by the Bene Gesserit themselves.
Yes.
Now, but does that come from their own true scripture? Because it seems to be happening, right? Like it's a fake thing that they're making happen with their faith? Is that what's happening?
Is it self-fulfilling prophecy? Did all these things happen because they said it once upon a time, so people are purposely putting these things into motion and things like that? And also, as far as I know, I am not an expert when it comes to the Dune universe, but this has caused me to look it up a little bit, so I'm briefly familiar with it. And there's a new Dune TV show in the works that's all about the prophecy, and it's 1,000 years before this, or 100 years before this, or some long time before this, probably 1,000 years or more.
10,000 years before the birth of Paul Atreides. Before the universe would know us as the Bene Gesserit. We founded a sisterhood.
And it's the Bene Gesserit, the formation of their society, and how they use this prophecy to whisper in the ears of kings and lords and barons across the universe to try to bend society in the direction they feel it should go in. And this is that's part of what I like about this, is it's ambiguous enough that you'll notice a couple times when the Bene Gesserit are talking in this, or in Dune 2, that they're basically, it feels like there's an undertone. I'm not sure if it's explicit or not, but they're kind of saying, like, did we just fuck ourselves? Like,
right.
Because they're accepting responsibility for, like, we put these events in motion and look what's about to happen because of it. So
so it's 100% false?
I don't know. I don't know. And that's what I enjoy about the ambiguity. As a non-religious person myself, I still appreciate when stories that involve religion, they don't tell you for sure, yes, this was the will of God, and yes, this is prophecy, but there's enough for the believers to see what they really want to see in the story, and there's enough for the skeptics like me to be like, oh, so this was all planned, blah 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 blah. You know? Yeah,
and the way I take it and the way I choose to interpret this as another person who's not, religious or of any real faith or anything, it almost seems to be saying to me that it's that their faith, the Fremen's faith, make it real, right? Like, if having something to believe in makes things happen.
Absolutely, and I think even a lot of religious people might agree with that statement. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact that, like, the fact that we believe, we do create the reality. Like, if you had a group of Christians, they would say our faith in our Lord is what makes us make change in the world. That's what our commandments are about. That kind of. So
right.
Yeah,
and
I could see it.
I kind of like that's also that doesn't have to be a religious thing necessarily, right? Like you can believe in the power of technology to uplift humanity to the stars, whatever, something to
you
believe
in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the free hand at the market.
Hey,
any of these things.
You know what? You say that, but if you believe in those things, you're going to get presents. And depending on what type of person you are, you might, with few old ladies kicked out of their houses, you might get a few, $100,000 in your
You might
stock
get some
portfolio.
COVID loans that you don't have to pay back.
Exactly. So, just saying, if you believe in something, that's what
Faith is believing what you cannot see. The reward of faith is getting your PPL loan paid off.
Yeah.
Student loan debt? Anybody? Please. Anyways, go ahead. We're talking about sci-fi, science fiction. Where student loan doesn't exist.
Well, we're talking about Dune specifically.
Yes.
So the big thrust of this and the main overarching plot is that prophecy and how much he doesn't want to step into that role, and he keeps saying, one of them should be leading them, and I'm not your chosen one, but I still want to. I just want to learn to fight because he wants revenge. Basically, is his sort of thrust.
Is that wokeism changing the story? You know what I mean? And I say that completely ironically. Is it because if we look at the original telling of Paul, and what I've heard from those that have read the book is that the original Paul didn't doubt himself, that he was always ready to lead the Fremen, and he had to face challengers along the way, but he never doubted himself the whole way. Whereas that feels very white savior. Whereas this Paul is kind of doing what white people, what we're told is the best way to help marginalized community, which is to uplift their voices. So, for example, if you were starting a nonprofit for disadvantaged Black communities in the inner city, you wouldn't put yourself, a white person, in charge of community outreach.
On the poster? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You let the people that the thing is affecting, let them stand up and speak for themselves. So now this Paul is rewritten to say, "Oh, I shouldn't be the savior. You should pick one of them. You should pick one of them." And I'm thinking, maybe is that our current sensibilities bleeding into storytelling?
I think it's 100 times more compelling to me as the reluctant hero than.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I think it works on a couple fronts, but I'm wondering if that factors into their decisions somewhere along the way. They're like, you know what? Yeah, I think he's more likable if we have him say, you know what, they should lead themselves. They should stand up for themselves. I'm not here to lead them.
Even so, more likable just leads into a better downfall for this character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, because that's the seeds that are planted like 2/3 of the way through this movie, it feels like.
Right, so the reason he's so reluctant is because after he had been, exposed to the spice in the first movie and having these visions, he sees himself winning and going on to lead the Fremen in a march across the galaxy that leaves billions dead, is his words,
Yeah, and part of the reason why he experiences such big hallucinations, from what I heard in the recap that we just watched, and I saw this in some other things, I haven't seen anything that, I don't remember being told this explicitly, is that he is more sensitive to the spice than the average person.
Yeah.
Which I think another way of saying that you're more sensitive to hallucinogens is that you have a lower tolerance to them. So this guy is going to be the leader of a people because he's got a really low tolerance to acid.
No, dummy. Much. He's got more midichlorians. Get it right.
Oh, my bad. I was confusing the Anakin metaphor.
What don't you fucking understand?
So, but in his corner, possibly against his will at first, not against his will, but against what he actually wants to do, Javier Bardem,
fucking love him. Every time I've seen him in a role, he is so fucking good. He draws my eyes to him in a way that's like, I'm not attracted to him how you would normally think of the word, but I am so drawn to him, like mentally, emotionally. Every time he talks, I just want him to like me or not kill me or whatever the role is.
He is like gung-ho, die-hard belief in this prophecy and that Paul is the one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's something so charming and endearing about the way he, for example, when when they're picking names and Paul says Muad'Dib for desert mouth, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like in his way, that's him trying to lessen his image.
Yeah.
But then Javier Bardem's character like runs with it, and he's like the desert. He knows the desert and is a survivor, and he's like rolling his eyes.
Yeah, and he says like this is
the Muad'Dib would not want to take the place, and he does the little hand gesture, you know, like his faith or whatever. I don't know. He
considers it a
great.
wise choice because it's not. It's
right.
Anybody could have picked. He could have tried to pick the worm or some variation on the worm or something like a knight from his own history. But no, he decided to pick the mouse because it adapted to. It might not be from this planet, but it adapted to this planet, and now it's just as much a part of the desert as every other living creature that's trying to make to survive in the desert world. So yeah, it's a good way to connect him and his pure enthusiasm and acceptance of Paul kind of like saves the Fremen a little bit, almost, because other than him, it doesn't seem like not a single fucking person really outwardly accepts him. Like
not at first.
Chani, she acts like she's indifferent to her friends, and eventually she shows that she likes him to her friends. But to him, she's still kind of a jerk most of the time, you know, so, which we find out later that's part of the culture of the people that she comes from, which I fucking love when you have sci-fi worlds that don't have monolithic cultures, that the Fremen are a people, but within those people, there are multiple different ways of viewing the world, that even just having that big, huge dichotomy between the believers and the non-believers, or the skeptics and the religious people.
Right. And that's just in this group.
I love that.
And they have a different faction on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, that's just in this group. And we're told that the other factions on the other side of the planet are like 95% of their population. The people that we see out in the desert are not the big pockets of people because they know it's out in the open. All of their people live in the storms where they can hide easier. So there are millions where there are like, we're led to believe maybe 50,000 or 100,000 out in the open desert that we know of, but no, there are millions down there. So that's so cool. And I like, part of me does want to read the books because I want to start to learn more about what are the subcultures within the Fremen, because, you know, sociologist.
I ask for this, do not seek our sieges, do not trespass in our lands. The desert was ours long before you came.
Meanwhile, as per the prophecy, Paul's mom has to drink the water of life and replace the wise woman of the tribe.
Fucking traumatic in a few ways. She gets told by what's his name? Siegfried? No. Salt beer? What's his name? Yeah, I don't remember. It's something that starts with an S. I forget.
Why do you do this?
Stilgar. That's
Stilgar. Yeah, he basically says, "Hey, you should lead our women." And she's like, "Oh, well, what if I don't feel like it?" He goes, "Well, then we're just going to kill you and take your water."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really not much of a choice. So it's traumatic in that way. And then she doesn't want to drink it, but then the woman orders her to drink it with the voice, and that every time they use the voice, it's a little bit creepy. They do such a good job with the sound and the acting and the way the people that are using the voice, they just cut the other person off because it doesn't fucking matter what you're talking about. You're going to do this now. Oh, so cool. But yeah.
Speaking of taking your water, turning your water to the reservoir, I love the funerary rites of the Fremen.
Absolutely.
It's practical and also meaningful. They get vacuum sealed, mummified, and their water is sucked out and returned to the pool that they have.
Yep.
I think he explains like how many millions of liters they have, and says that each one of us dying of thirst would not dare drink a drop because they're collecting it all for the day when they will use it to basically terraform Arrakis.
Yeah, and like, not only is that
thousands of
sacred,
years of collecting water.
Yeah, he points at somebody pouring water in, and he says that is, I forget the character's name, but the man that died at the end of Dune 1. He said that's his water. And I think you could read that literally and say, oh, they're putting his water in there right now. But I took it as symbolic. Like, you know, that person that you respected and you knew from a little while ago, his water's in here too, along with the people that died today. Like, so many of us, all of us, ideally, will come back to this water pool, and this is where we'll serve our culture in the future. I mean, I also think it's a huge waste of water on a planet. You know, your people are literally like dying
of thirst.
Like, you can spare a little bit. How about you give 90% of the water to the pool and 10% you keep for your own use? I don't think your ancestors will mind that much. But yeah, but that it's also so sad that, like, to skip forward in the timeline, because obviously if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you've either read the book, watched the movie, or you don't give a shit about spoilers. But later on, we find that this entire place just get blown to fucking hell. So all that sacred, respect for the water just gets wasted. We're going to save it till the time that our leader comes and saves us, and then the leader shows up, and that water just gets destroyed. So it was pointless all along. I don't know. Again, you can tell I'm not a religious person, so I imagine if there was somebody that was more religious minded, they might have a very philosophical reason why it's still a symbol of the people and stuff like that. But God, what a waste, That if you put all that water in little caverns around the desert, it would have gone to much more use than all of it being destroyed right there, or going back into the water table under the fucking sand, or wherever the fucking water goes.
And so I like how this we kind of skip around through time here. Like it doesn't. I guess you could technically kind of read this as all these events happening back to back, but this feels like a campaign over months,
showing you
I'd
guerrilla
say,
warfare. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So we see him taking down the spice crawler thing, and a pretty fun little action sequence.
And I love that guerrilla warfare shows up so much in all of these types of media, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's this. A bunch of things that you've known and loved involve guerrilla warfare of a smaller army versus a larger army. And it's funny because in our literature, we don't really see much of an answer for guerrilla warfare. And that's kind of what we see in the world to a certain degree. If you have a motivated people that are fighting for their freedom, they will be very resourceful, and it's very, very difficult to rule a people if they're not ideologically in line with you. That's why, you see governments more worried about propaganda but then again, you're seeing both sides of it now. You're seeing militarization of police and increased propaganda, but that's a completely different subject. But I think there are themes in this movie that will kind of touch on that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of old as time, right? It's the American Revolution. It's the Mujahideen fighters that we armed in the 1980s.
Let's look at two revolutions real quick. So you look at American Revolution, like you just brought up. And the American Revolution was a source of a lot of innovation in the world. It showed a lot of different upstart governments that it was possible to do what the Americans did with their revolt. They created the first representative democracy republic. So there was a lot of positives. The Constitution was a brilliant document when it was first invented. A lot of their ideas were really wonderful. And look at where we are now. The United States is one of the most horrendous causes of death around the world. And, there's not a whole lot to, the idea went bad. And then you look at the French Revolution, and it was much quicker with the French Revolution. Those people, they toppled that government in a very violent, very quick manner. And then the people they put in power were very corrupt. And then shortly afterwards, they ended up with another monarchy. They just went right back to fucking monarchy because they didn't.
It's an endless cycle with pockets of peace and prosperity. That's all I can say.
And as somebody that I haven't seen the Dune series, I don't know where the story goes from here. I've kind of heard a little bit about Paul's rise to power, but I have no idea what happens after that. But after seeing the way this movie ends, I'm a little worried that this is going to mirror our real world. Oh, yeah. And it's not going to be pretty. And
I think some horrible things happen further on in the series. Literal space genocide happens.
I'm thinking about Anakin with the younglings, but on a much broader scale.
So we now it's time for Paul to learn to ride in the movie. We're about an hour in, I'd say. And this is pretty cool. Riding sandworms will always be cool. They have their little thumpers that call them, but when they see it come in the distance,
dirty.
Stilgar is like, no, not that big. He basically summons the head bitch in charge sandworm, Shai Halud.
Oh yeah, and when it's going through, the way that the mountain of sand that he's running up, it just completely gives way, and it's like, how do you can't run now? You're just completely in a free fall.
You're in a free fall of sand.
Yeah, and you can't really breathe much. I don't know how soft a Shai Halud is on its outer skin when you land from 20 feet up or more. But yeah, that was incredible. And this is one of those scenes made even better by the incredible soundtrack, which we haven't really touched on, but I'm sure I'm not alone in my appreciation for the music in this movie. damn, like it's so, as a music creator myself, it's almost depressing because anytime I listen to a Hans Zimmer, because this is Hans Zimmer, I believe, right? I didn't even look it up, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes, Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, so like it's almost upsetting to me because Hans Zimmer can do some really complicated stuff, and some of his soundtracks have a lot of moving parts, a lot of modulations and key changes, and really cool stuff going on. So he knows how to do the complex, but he does things like this, or Interstellar, or even like Inception, that are so simple. The Dark Knight, it's so
Just
simple.
like a sustained note.
But he knows how to use a
yeah.
sustained note and how to bring in another note that is slightly in dissonance, but it kind of evens out into a minor or major, and it's brilliant. It's simple, and that's how you know that you have a master at any art, is when they can go past the complex and bring things back to complete simplicity, and it's still beautiful and amazing. And people like me are sitting there going, God damn it! Like, I'm having trouble with the complex stuff. There's no I'm jealous, but I'm so happy. My ears are happy every time I hear some of his music.
So after he catches his sandworm, Shawnee catches his sandworm. They wind up in the...
Again, dirty.
Oh, you were sitting on that, weren't you? You were waiting for that one.
which also brings up my question. Speaking of sandy genitalia, how do these people fucking bathe if they're not allowed to access the water that they have collected?
Okay, so like
you said you heard about it and it involves surprise sand.
Yeah, I've heard like 3 different ways. One person I read said that in the books there is a nod to the fact that they used sand to like rub themselves of all dirt and any kind of moisture, and they just do that with sand in a way. Another person said that they use those like wooden scoops like the Romans used to use to like scrape their skin of any kind of dirt, and they'd put oil and then scrape the oil off, kind of thing. And somebody else said that their suits are so good at collecting moisture that they don't really sweat, or at least whatever little sweat is there, it doesn't pool on their skin at all. So they generally don't stink when they take their clothes off, because what stinks on your body is the sweat growing bacteria, and the sweat is immediately sopped up into their suit. So it doesn't stink as bad. So they don't need to bathe as often, even though they sweat a lot more.
I literally, in all of the romance scenes, I could not get it out of my mind. How fucking bad do these motherfuckers stink?
Oh, they got those things up their nose for a different reason. It's just so that they don't have to smell their other person's crotch.
So they can take their pants off in the same room as each other.
They always do it on a windy day up on top. Let's not stand down. Let's point you this direction. No, it's I didn't even think about that.
I like the soup. The suit version.
No, you were describing the soup version. That's
What the hell is even that?
Yeah, no. I like the suit version of that best, because I don't like the idea of rubbing sand into or scraping my genitalia with scoops. So I'll take the suit for 500.
You know what? Anakin would agree with you, and Timothy Chalamet would be like, you just haven't found the right sand yet.
We get another attack from the Harkonnens. I believe this might be the big... No, it's not the big...
Haha, you switched to my way of saying it.
What?
Harkonnen.
Oh, the Harkonnens.
I shouldn't have told you. I should have just let you keep going.
Yeah, they come in and they like sort of find their holy site while they're away doing other operations, and take down their basically their base, right? That's where they were operating.
Is this where you're talking about when the Harkonnens kill the Siege or destroy the Siege?
Yeah. When he's just
isn't that after Fade?
Fire!
Isn't that after Fade comes to power? I thought that's what Fade did first.
Oh, okay. Well, this is they're just this is the scene. Never mind. I'm sorry. I got confused. I'll edit that so I don't look like a moron.
Or I can just leave it in and make you look dumb.
Yeah, either one or the other.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
They can't see them, right? They're attacking in the sandstorm, and he just tells them to fire, and they like shoot into a bunch of rocks. I was mistaking that for when he's firing on there, because I mean, both times they're essentially shooting at a big pile of rocks. So you'll have to forgive me.
And there are 2 different times where they're just firing into the side of a sand dune, is what it kind of looks like to us. So a sand dune with a hornet's nest sticking out the side.
This is where Raban, is that his name?
Raban.
Raban sort of shows his true colors when he orders the retreat, and Paul runs and jumps on the...
Yeah, because he jumps out and he challenges Muad'Dib!
Yeah.
And when Muad'Dib is like, fine, motherfucker, let's go. And he's like, oh shit, oh shit. And he's taken off the hell out of there. And that's where we see, again, like up until this point, like anybody that knows these super alpha males can, like, we can kind of piece together that he's a fucking house of cards. He's a fucking balloon. It's all fucking hot air in there. But we haven't seen a whole lot of proof of that. We got that idea from the way he acts towards people and the way he, terrorizes people that are lower than him and stuff. But yeah, this is the first time we see it in person. We see somebody actually capable challenging him and standing up to him, and he does not know how to fucking deal with that aside from goddamn fear. Fear is the mind killer in that moment for him.
So back on Coruscant or whatever the Empire world is, I don't remember what it's called. The Emperor's daughter is, kind of suspecting that Paul is still alive. I don't think she's sure yet at this point, but she brings it to the Bene Gesserit, and they say that they're going to install the nephew of the lead Harkonnen. What is his name?
Phaedra or Phaedrautha or something like that. I think it's Phaedrautha, but everybody calls him Phaedra.
Isn't that Pennywise?
Let's see. Yeah, Phaedrautha. He's the first person listed when you Google the movie as the first cast member.
Bill Skarsgård.
No, it's Austin. Oh, I thought you were saying that its real name was Phaedrautha. No, it's Austin Butler.
I thought. See, now he's like a twin. He could be that guy's twin this whole time. I thought
he looks like a handsome version of Skarsgård. I mean, Skarsgård is handsome enough in his own way, but he's got a little bit of he's a funny looking fella kind of thing going on. Whereas this guy doesn't have that. He's Skarsgård's really good looking cousin or brother. Or something.
if you cover up like half of his eyes and look at his face, he looks very similar to him.
Yeah.
I literally thought that was since the other Skarsgård was in here, it's just a whole big old family thing that they pull.
Yeah.
Skarsgårds kind of have a gravitational pull that when they're in something.
Is that a fat joke? Are you making fun of the Harkonnen Baron because he's
literally,
heavy?
anytime there's a Skarsgård, there's bound to be one or two other Skarsgårds present.
They kind of crop up everywhere. Yeah. Once you see one, you got multiple. It's like a bed bug or a hornet.
But yeah, so I just naturally thought that was him, but it's not. Wow, I just learned something.
For the record, we are pro Skarsgård. As far as I know, I don't know anything negative about the Skarsgård. So this is all tongue in cheek. Nothing. Don't send us any hate mail. Well, actually, sure, go ahead.
And so she's the Emperor's daughter is like having her. I see. Troubled waters ahead conversation with the Bene Gesserit, and the lead mother or whatever is like, don't worry, we're gonna put the false Skarsgård in charge of things. And it's his birthday celebration, and this is another we get to see cool culture stuff, which is part of what I love about science fiction. Unfortunately,
this culture is represented very monolithic, but you would understand that at a national event kind of thing like this. Like if you looked at America and you only looked at the Super Bowl, that would give you one image of what Americans look like. And yeah, it does look like that, but the rest of America, a lot of people don't give a shit about the Super Bowl, that kind of thing.
But it also, they're kind of Klingonish, right? They seem to be a very war and strength favoring sort of people.
Without the honor, like it seems like Phaedrautha is different than Baron Harkonnen because he has a little bit of honor. Like when he realizes that the guy is actually fighting well, and the only thing that saved his life was the shield, he takes the shield off so he can fight him hand to hand.
And the other guy stabs him or whatever, stabs one of them, right? It's kind of like that moment from Game of Thrones where the guard got
Ned.
Yeah, Ned's leg, and Jaime gets pissed.
Yeah, same thing. Like this was a duel. This was supposed to be a fair duel. If I win or lose, I would rather it be fair either way. And that's why he throws the shield down. But yeah, that was this whole scene was really cool. The fact that like you see that the Baron is. It almost feels like, is he giving him a gift? Is he challenging him?
It's both. That is the gift. The gift is the challenge.
It's the kind of gift that Thulsa Doom gave Conan, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, I made you strong by threatening your life and almost killing you here. He did have to go through it, I guess. So, like,
right, but it's also like I respect my nephew enough to toss this challenge at him and give him like this. That's his birthday present. At the same time, it's also a little like, well, if he fucks up, then fuck him. You know what I mean? Like, if he can't do it, then he can't do it, and that's that no skin off my sack. You know.
But right afterwards, we see him say to the Baron, "I should drown you in your pool." Yeah. So, like, he's openly taking it as hostility, and so he doesn't see it as a gift. But like you and I watching from the audience booth can see that it is kind of a gift, because what he wouldn't have got any joy from slaughtering another person that's drugged. He would get joy from actually winning a fucking battle, and that rush and you could see when the guy is almost stabbing him in the face and he's like drooling all over the blade and stuff like that. But like he's exhilarated. He is having a great fucking time. And he's having an orgasm pretty much right now. It's a little distracting. That's why he can't fight. The
plan also, the motions are already set to install him on the throne after disposing of the Emperor. Says this is kind of hey, this guy is a big deal. You know, all my people, like, this is the guy to watch out for. When everyone on the planet watches this happen, oh, he's a hero to their people now, right? Of course, that aids his ability to...
And don't we see a little bit of our current day propaganda of manufactured consent?
Sure.
The party putting somebody forward and saying, look, this is the next person you're going to root for, and this is why you should root for them.
100%.
Can you picture that?
And it's all planned before you even get there. There was really no real chance of the bad guy losing in that situation.
And it's also I guess their sun blocks out all the color on their, because we see in color when they're in their hallways.
Their sun only shows infrared light. It bathes the planet in infrared light. So all normal colors that people would wear are completely, it's either black or white. How our human eyes see is only black or white and infrared. That's why, you know, the Bene Gesserit, their outfits are like, they're black normally, but when they stand in the infrared light of their sun, they're bright white. And that's why their skin is the way it is. And I love the fact that that's why they developed fireworks the way they did, is sort of like ink blots to blot out the sun. That's how they paint the sky, is by blotting out the white of the sun, that kind of thing. I thought that's cool. And I like seeing, like, I love Star Trek, of course, but I would love going back to those planets and seeing, like, what are the effects of these planets in 1,000 years? What happens to a human body if it's on a planet with low gravity for 4 generations? Do we see them get taller? Do we see them be able to, do they jump more, or do they swing more? Like, do they use their arms more when they run? Like, I'm so curious how the humans would evolve in different kind of situations, you know?
It also shows that someone thought about every aspect of this, be it Frank Herbert, the original author, or the crafters of this film. They think past things besides, most people stop at, wouldn't it be cool if? This seems to say, wouldn't it be cool if, and here's why. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it feels like the percentages are like 95 to 98% Frank Herbert. You know, from what I understand, that's part of the reason why I haven't really gotten into reading the books, is because they're a lot like, the Lord of the Rings, the J.R.R. Tolkien, that they build the world more. Like, J.R.R. Tolkien would be a great person to build a world for you to have a D&D campaign in, but I don't know if I'd want him as the dungeon master, because he would explain every fucking room we're in. He would say all the different people that were involved in building it for the last 20 years. And yeah, that's important for your world. It's important for those facts to exist within your world, but as the audience, I don't need to hear every single one of them. But then that also lends a movie like this so well to an audience member like me, because I know that history exists. I could go onto a Dune wiki and I can read for hours about all of these facts in the background, and I can see which book it's referenced in. There are 18 to 20 different novels, and they're all fucking thick as hell. So yeah, there's a lot of lore, and God bless, but I don't know. From what I understand, his writing style is very fact-based and history-based, and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and I just know that some people say that be warned going into Dune as a reader that it's gonna be a while till things really happen.
Sure. Back on Arrakis, the embetterment of Paul continues, and in one of their operations, they come across Josh Brolin. Who's,
Gurney.
Yeah, Gurney. Is that who Patrick Stewart plays?
Yes. Yeah, Patrick Stewart is Josh Brolin in this movie.
Yeah.
Or the other way around.
I remember that much. Who has been also out in the desert sticking it to the man.
Again, dirty.
Guerrilla warfare style.
But working for a mercenary company,
Yeah.
which that was a cool scene. And I'd like to point out those mines were fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Like really strong magnets that just explode once they make contact with metal. It kind of like, I imagine that the inner workings is like it completes the circuit and causes the explosion to happen. Like fucking brilliant.
Yeah, cool stuff. But the main thing for me here is where I guess this is our first sort of hint that, maybe Paul is gonna give in, because he tells him that, Paul Atreides, since you're alive, I know where your family's hidden stash of nukes are.
Mm-hmm.
And when he takes them to them and shows them, Paul has this, like, excited, giddy smile almost. When he's, which is, I'm like,
there's like 94 of them.
Yeah.
I looked up, and I don't know if it said it in the movie, but it made me look up what are atomics in this world, which that's what they call them, is atomics, but they're atomic weapons. And apparently, according to the law of the land, and all of the great houses follow it because it was a part of a big, huge thing, it is against the law of all the houses if you use an atomic weapon on another house. So it is considered a huge, huge faux pas to the point of you will be ostracized from society if you use an atomic. But you can use atomic weapons like on other things or on, derelict spaceships, I guess. I don't know what the fuck. And that's why they probably go to waste, because if you can't use them in war, then what's the fucking point in them?
Right. So they are preparing Paul's mom and a contingent to travel via worm through the sandstorms to the south half of the planet and go meet up with the main contingent and main body of people. And I believe now, while that's happening, when many are away and only I would imagine non-fighters and probably women and children are left back at the home base for the Fremen. This is when the newly christened, newly feeling himself, Fade Rautha comes in, and they attack their sacred site.
Which, it's obvious that, it's kind of weird that Rabban had not attempted to do that before. Like, you're not showing them respect. Was it fear? Or did he just not fucking know where they are? Yeah. How did he not know? But as soon as Fade Ra gets there, he knows exactly where the shit's at.
Yeah, that's not really explained. I don't mind it, I guess.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't cloud my enjoyment.
Yeah.
But horrible that now we're seeing that, like, the blood, quote unquote, of tens of thousands of Fremen is now being just dumped into the sand, and their sacred home is being demolished. And we saw what it was like inside. It was beautiful. Even though it was very scary at times, it was still gorgeous and so, like, important to the culture. There was such reverence to it, and, that's
now,
sad.
I know it's a result of this, but I must have missed, or, like, stepped up to get a drink or something, but what makes Paul feel he needs to go attempt to drink the water of life? Because I know earlier his mom says a man is going to come here and try to do it, and you will let him. But what makes him make that decision? I wasn't 100% sure.
He has another vision, and the man from the first movie, the man that he killed, how he comes to him when he's crossing the desert in his test to become a Fremen, and they, like, it's almost Stilgard kind of teases that he's a djinn. So Paul has another dream where this djinn appears to him and basically tells him that your fate is to go south. You have to go south. And Paul's like, but if I go south, then blah, 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 blah will happen. And the person doesn't really respond to that. They just say, you have to drink the water of life. You have to drink the water of life. You have to kill, or you have to die to live, or something like that. And it scares the shit out of him, but it's so matter of fact that he accepts it in his dream, and he wakes up and that changes his mind, that I saw it in the vision that I have to go down there. And
okay, I must have, like I said, been grabbing a drink or wrangling a dog or something.
And I might be confusing a couple scenes here. It was a long movie, and there was a lot of visions there, here and there.
This is a 3-hour movie, folks. You'll
audience member, if you listen to this and you're like, well, actually, you're probably right. But this is how I remember it happening. So my experience is totally valid, and the multiverse theory means that in my universe it actually did happen, so back off.
But can you believe it, you guys? He survives drinking the water of life.
But he gets to see Anya Taylor-Joy, so it's all worth it in my mind. That is this is a selling point for the water of life. There's a chance I will die, but as I go, I get to hang out with Anya Taylor-Joy. So, I mean, is it? I mean, also, it's just good to have options.
At which exact point does he find out that have Harkonnen blood? Is that in his vision?
It's said, the way I took it is it's said off camera. Like, she starts to talk to him and it's implied that now he has met his little sister and they're going to have a conversation, and then it fades to black or whatever, and we see him go up to his mother and say, so we're Harkonnens, and that's because he just heard it. Right,
and I do like that line, though, as bad as it looms for Paul in his future. He says, so let's be Harkonnens, and gives his big crazy war speech, like out of nowhere. The desert mouse, you know.
What a scene!
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody, probably not everybody, but a lot of people share the same feeling I did. That at the beginning, I'm like, yeah, Paul, fucking tell him, no, you're not going to fucking kill Stilgard so you can speak. You're the Quadits, Hizarash or whatever.
I have it. But he's sitting on the steps and he says, "I saw our bloodline, mother." So it was part of his vision. But I'm skipping just back a little bit because, again, this is a very Anakin Skywalker scene. The scene where we see him just walking towards this meeting through the desert in the black cloak with Shai Hulud like breaching the sand behind him is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So many visuals. What a cool scene! Like, what a badass! You know, like I'm not susceptible to, oh hell yeah, that's badass, but that's fucking badass.
A cool dude doesn't look at explosions. It doesn't work for me anymore. If you put sunglasses on while you're facing away from an explosion, you're a fucking idiot.
Sure. But exploding sandworms, that's still on the table because he does not turn around. Yeah. But it's almost like he's basically kind of having like a symbiosis or control of Shai Hulud. They're obviously communicating telepathically from what happened in the first one when it just kind of stops and they're staring at each other, you know? So I think it's implied there's some kind of connection there that's like his pet giant sandworm now, essentially.
Well, and I think there's a connection there, and also it goes deeper that like the Shai Hulud does not necessarily have good or bad. It's just it's a creature that devours and cares in some weird tangential way for the desert and the Fremen. But I saw somebody talking about Dune as somebody accused Paul Atreides of being a Mary Sue, and the person responding was like, well, no shit, he's a Mary Sue. That's kind of the point. And it started making me think that, like, you know, much like you could argue that Anakin Skywalker, it's kind of like the question was asked, what if Mary Sue but go bad? You know, like,
the chosen one, spoiled. Yeah.
Superman. And I started comparing it to Superman the other night when I was thinking about it too, that like Superman is such a compelling character, but when Superman is in really, really, really interesting stories, it's when there's something off about him, when you can't trust him to just save the day no matter what. Like, yeah, him being kept in a cage of kryptonite, that's whatever. So that just kind of takes him out of the story is what that really does. But what really is compelling is when you have Superman, a person with unlimited power, and you see him start to taint towards the evil side. Right. And you have Anakin Skywalker, somebody that you've grown to love and admire through lots of adventures, and now he's killing children because it's what he's being ordered to do, you know. Right. But now the only difference is with this Mary Sue, we're seeing he is the guy in charge. He is the way that he's telling them that I am going to make the new norms for our society. Some of the Fremen norms I'm going to honor, and some of them I'm just going to break, which is such a difference compared to the Paul we saw at the beginning of part 2.
And he embraces, like, instead of just being Paul Madib Usul, he says he's Paul Madib Atreides. He like honors his house. He's like becoming both, right? A true unification of that house and people. But even Stilgar, when he jumps up there and he's just like, Paul is just screaming and like being very, very, very like not even warmongery, but like powerfully speaking to these people.
Aggressively speaking
Yes.
to he's irritating and agitating everybody in the room, kind of like, no, fuck you. Fuck all of you. Fuck, I hate every motherfucker in this room. Is what it sounds like. It sounded like the fuck you, fuck you.
Even Stilgar for a second, and the look on his face for a few of those scenes, he's like, oh no, what is happening? What is, you know what I mean?
What did I do? What did I do?
Yeah.
And I said, this guy he's the Messiah. Oh boy, did I fuck up.
I made a huge mistake.
He has a moment of that, like, but then, like, he falls in line. But
it's almost like, and then something happens that, like, okay, if you accept Paul Atreides as a representative of the Fremen people, which it seems weird for me to talk about Paul Atreides as if he were a marginalized person. So I'm going to say, so the experience as a Fremen man. So like the experience as a brown man. No, he ain't fucking brown, but whatever. Like, I understand that a Fremen in that situation would not be concerned with pleasantries and keeping tradition.
Right.
It's you all should be as pissed off as I am. And he tells two people's stories of ways that he can prove that I've seen more than what you know. I know your grandmother. I've talked to her and she's in my mind. But he tells them this story to a violent end. You remember when I know your grandmother, blah, 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 blah. She lost her eye and she wants more from you or something like that.
Yeah.
Like he turns that to a violent end. And there is a part where, like, when you see a marginalized community rise up like that, where you're like, fuck yeah, get them. You all should be mad. I get that anger. And I don't know, but then you can also see where that anger could lead down the wrong path and you could end up just destroying rather than saving.
You know, I mean, Paul is using that anger of those people to, while he's also come to respect and does want their freedom, he's also just at the same time using that to get his revenge for his father. You know, that's still a big part of it.
I mean, yeah, you think about this, the telling of the story from a different perspective is white guy goes into a brown community, stays with them for a while, is accepted in the community, decides to lead the community. Then once he leads the community, he uses his newfound power to marry into a rich family and marry another white woman, leaving his brown wife behind on the sand planet.
Yep.
Like, what the fuck, dude? You sound like a dickhead is what you sound like those guys that leave their wife with stage 4 cancer or something like that. What an asshole.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we know that it's for political reasons. So I understand it, but from a perspective, it could be a really shitty white savior story.
Right. I mean, it's more like it's white savior is half the story, because then he's obviously not much of a savior when he's brutally ruling the galaxy and slaughtering billions of people. But I digress. That's for future movies.
Oh God, I have no idea about any of that.
But yeah, so it's time to plan their big attack. I guess the Emperor himself is visiting Arrakis, and the Harkonnens and his big disco ball that hangs out above the...
Is it just me, or was their army, like, it felt kind of small? Like, you show up, the Emperor shows up, he knows that this is a battlefield. He knows he's going into a hot conflict zone. And, I mean, I don't know, that initial attack, like, I'm sure it took... if I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry, but...
No, that's about where we're at. Like, they're,
that initial attack, which we'll talk about that, too, that it from what I understand, like, I don't know how much of this translated to the screen, but I looked up, like, when I was looking up the atomics, and part of how Paul kept his political face in this scene was he did not use the atomics on people. He used them on the mountain right next to the people. And the idea was, in the book at least, is that the Emperor had landed in a valley that only had one opening that you could get to it by land. Yeah. And he put all of his troops in that land. And Paul shot over the Sardaukar and into the mountain behind them when all the Fremen were, like, right behind that. So they used that opening, riding the snakes in, and they went into the camp that way. Right. So, like, in the book, that sounds like an amazing tactic. In the movie, they're not in like a little pocket of mountains. They're not. They are anywhere near.
They are.
It didn't feel as bad though. I felt like they could have just attacked from any angle. Like it wasn't.
It's like a big half circle that they're in. It is fully.
Maybe my eyes just didn't pick up on it, but it didn't feel like they were that protected. But
you don't really see it in the scene, but they show it on the map when they're planning it. They show the little circle of mountains around it. So that is still the case. It's just maybe if you aren't like really.
And even if you don't use that mountain tactic, I thought it was a brilliant way of using the atomic that I didn't use it on people. I used it right next to them and blew all the entire mountain into their fucking forces.
Right.
So now you have rocks landing on people, rocks landing on guns, yada, yada,
you got a sandstorm being caused.
So much dirt in the air. Yeah. So much dirt and sand in the air that all of your thornicopter things, they're all getting like grounded or they can't see what the fuck is going on. All your people on the ground are confused and the Fremen are riding in on fucking huge sandworms and they're used to the sandstorm. So it's obviously a slaughter in that way, but it still felt like I was expecting more people from the Emperor. The way they talk about numbers in the Dune universe, it sounds like the numbers are incredibly high. Like everything's in the millions and billions. Nobody has an army of 100. It doesn't feel like. I
mean, there's wide shots showing their army, and there's easily probably a couple, like 100,000 people out there.
Really? Yeah. I mean, maybe I was getting the impression that maybe 10,000, and I was like, the number felt really small to me. I mean, it was still. Now, don't let my little tiny nitpicking take away from the fact that that scene was fucking incredible. And seeing that worm come out and that sound effect / soundtrack moment, whatever. I don't know who was in charge of that, if it was Hans Zimmer or the sound person, but that was fucking incredible. And I remember when we see after it's well established that the worms are raiding the camp, we see like a side view of a few of the riders and they're riding in, and the music, it feels like I can hear like heavy metal guitar almost. I don't know if it was actually in there, but it felt like that. And I was reminded of the guitar guy from Fury Road. That kind of like, that's how epic that moment felt to me. Like that stuck in my mind of them riding into camp and just swallowing whole groups of Sardaukar at every time they'd come up and go back down. And that was why, I'm right there with you that the badass moments, quote unquote, don't necessarily work for me, but that one did. That one really
there are a couple of them in this movie. Like the duel that they have at the end is very good. It's like, because you can see where everybody is at all times. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like mindless quick cut action. It's a pretty cool duel, and there's like big stakes in the duel. That's what makes it matter. Is what's behind the fight, not just two badasses fighting. It's like,
and I didn't know for sure what was going to happen. So like when Paul gets stabbed, I was like, oh fuck, is he actually going to get the shit kicked out of him? And does he rise to power after this? Like I have no idea what's going to happen. And it was well done. It kept me on the edge of my seat until finally Paul kills the bad guy.
Yeah, he gets stabbed twice, doesn't he? And I think the way he's able to win is he quickly pulls that knife out of himself and into his enemy. Am I understanding that right?
A quick observation about this final fight too. Now, like I understand with Paul and Phaedra that they don't use shields because it's a matter of it's a fight for the honor. Yeah. But in the war, we're led to believe that firearms have been completely phased out because everybody wears shields in a war. And so firearms don't fucking work on people that have those shields because they specifically stop fast kinetic energy and they just slow it down so that it doesn't really do any good. So that's why you use swords. Why in this entire big fucking combat, why did nobody have a shield on? I didn't see a single fucking shield. The Fremen and the Sardaukar are just slashing at each other with swords as if it's just a regular medieval fucking combat scene. And there was no difference in the way they fight. And it's funny because that whole first movie, like not the whole first movie, but like half of the first movie, they spent a lot of time talking about how it changes the way you fight, that you get your knife close to the person. And then once you get behind their shield, that's when you stab with all your effort. You don't just stab with all your effort from way back here next to your body because it won't do any good. So like, I don't know. It's weird that they set up this whole shield combat thing. And then when it came time for a big, huge combat, that the shields just don't fucking exist. And I was thinking, well, shit, why don't you just bust out some fucking machine guns? Right. Then? If they're just fucking wearing normal heavy metal armor, just fucking blow them up with normal fucking weapons. I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. The only thing I could think of is that it's too expensive, but too expensive for the fucking emperor and his private guard. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to me. So it feels like, I don't know, is that just an error? Did they just fucking drop the ball and forget it? Or was it too much CGI work and they didn't want to be bothered with it? Because that seems such a weird a weird misstep in this kind of movie that they put so much attention to detail, and that I don't know.
Because I mean, it is still, we do see it on like certain people in this, don't we? Aren't they like? I would imagine those people that are circling the Emperor at the end, they probably have it like in the temple.
We don't even see them die. They die off screen.
Right.
But the people that were in the grand melee right outside the spaceship that he landed in, I didn't see.
Those are just grunts.
But I mean, still, they should.
They don't get a shield.
If the grunts don't get shields, then why don't the grunts get machine guns? Because if the whole reason why machine guns don't work anymore is because as a society, we figured out that machine guns are more effective than walking up to the person and hitting them with a piece of steel.
God damn it,
it's more effective
Kelley,
to stand far away.
Asking too many questions. Just enjoy the fucking movie.
You know, I did enjoy it, but it was in this scene, I'm like, where are all the shields? Why are we not? Because I wanted to see what a grand melee looked like when everybody was doing this slow quarter combat. It would have looked more like a dance almost, and I thought that would look really fucking cool. But instead, I got a cool looking scene, but it was no different than watching like Excalibur or fucking Game of Thrones. Yeah. It's identical, except for a little bit of beeps and boops and sci-fi technology around them.
Timothée Chalamet makes Christopher Walken kiss the ring. Zendaya rides off into the wormy sunset, and the stage is set.
And he tells her, "I will love you as long as I breathe," and then goes and promises himself to another woman.
He turns around in like the same room or whatever, and goes
right in front of everybody, and she takes off. I've heard that she is a very different character in the books than she is in the movie, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I for one like it if you're going to reimagine a story, like do a little bit different. I mean, you don't have to change everything. You don't have to make Paul Atreides like sprout wings and fly like a bird, but you can mess with the formula a little bit. Before we get to the end, a couple scenes that I wanted to point out. First off, when Raban and Phaedra switch places and Phaedra kicks the shit out of Raban, that was very visceral, and I think as an audience member, we enjoyed watching Raban get knocked down, but almost not at the expense of raising up Phaedra, because I think we kind of recognize that Phaedra is a little bit more of the real deal. Mm-hmm. And another moment you see that is if you compare the scene where Ravan goes into Baron Harkonnen's quarters or his pool of fucking tar shit, and he goes in there, he's like scampering. He looks like he's a scared little boy, and he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing in there. Whereas when Fade walks in, he walks in there with his fist balled, and the first thing he says to him is, "I should drown you in that pool." Yeah. Like one has no fear, maybe to his detriment, and the other one is just completely consumed with fear. And I think you would find that I don't know, but I think a lot of Dune fans would agree that fear is a main theme in these stories. So you see the two embodiments of what happens to a person when they have no fear and what happens to a person where they're just encompassed with fear in an all-consuming way. And neither one is good. Being completely devoid of fear doesn't, even though the Bene Gesserit want to tell you that, I don't think it really works. I think a little bit of fear is healthy. So yeah, that's pretty much the movie. I mean, we skipped over a couple small things like Phaedra completely butchering all of his underlings and doing it. And the difference between Phaedra and Raban is the difference between, an abusive, violent man and a psychopath. Yeah. Phaedra
He's like slitting throats and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Phaedra is the Michael Myers. He'll stab you and tilt his head so he can watch the light in your eyes die because it's so curious to him how people die. Whereas Raban will kill you because you made him look bad in front of somebody.
Yeah, or maybe not even kill you, just bash your head in to the console.
because he said, if you want to take a break, I can take control for a little bit. Fuck your break! I don't need no fucking break.
Yeah. He's Raban. Am I saying it right?
Raban, yeah.
Raban. He's the guy who brags about how many hours he worked this week.
Yeah.
The picture of his muddy boots.
Yep. Yeah. I saw a meme today about somebody saying like a woman worked 40 hours and she was bitching about her job, and some guy was like, "Hey, I worked fucking 75 hours last week, and 40 hours a week is just a hobby." And the whole comment section was just roasting this dude. Like, how are you proud of the fact that you have to work fucking 80 hours a week? You don't have a fucking life, man. Like, good for you, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Hey, look at me. Every time I get out of work, I just bang my head against a brick wall. Ain't I fucking cool? Sure. If that's what you want to do with your life, man. Have fun.
Raban is like, I don't need to rest. I've only worked 45 hours this week.
I'm getting really shitty results. My blood pressure is really fucking high, and I'm really fucking stressed out, and I can't put my fucking finger on it. Maybe you should take a nap. Fuck you!
Bootstraps, motherfucker!
Yeah, both sides at the same time. Yeah, so I think we're pretty much near the end there, right? Any last minute scenes you want to?
I think I've said, made my mention of the things that mostly the Stilgar and his blind faith and devotion, and the burial rituals of the Fremen. That's a couple of my favorite things, and just the newfound appreciation for just how much of the hero's journey and of this made it into Star Wars, and the cyclical nature that you pointed out. I think that's fun, and it's going to inspire me to actually do a little digging and find out just what George Lucas has said about how much this has influenced Star Wars. I'm going to do a little research.
Yeah, I would be curious to see an interview with Lucas about that Georgie boy, see what he says about it.
Yeah.
A couple of scenes that I'm remembering that we would be remiss if we didn't bring up. Harkonnen being thrown down by the Emperor and cut from his levitation device, and then Paul calling him grandfather before he kills him, and telling him that your death will be like the death of an animal, and just leaves him in the fucking desert so the ants can kill him, which is such a disrespect from the culture of the Fremen. Like, we don't even want your water. We don't want anything your body has to offer. Fucking cool. The special effects, like the one scene where we're looking at a base at night and we hear Stilgar whistle like a bird. It was such a good whistle that when I was watching this at night, as soon as that whistle happened, I paused the movie and I paused it as the explosion was happening, because I thought I heard a real bird out my window, and I was like, "This sounds like a really cool bird." I'm not normally a bird watcher, but it was like this. It sounds pretty cool. What made that noise? And then I was like, "Oh, was that in the movie?" I rewind a few seconds and I hear it again, and then I see the explosion. Fucking cool.
You'd be the one Harkonnen that's like, "Huh, I hear a cool bird," and steps out of formation and gets his fucking throat slit by some Fremen popping out of the sand. I wouldn't make a very
good Harkonnen anyways, because I talk way too fucking much, and those people don't talk at all. I'd be dead the first day out of the womb.
That'd be very funny to have a skit where it's you as the
talkative Harkonnen,
the new squad member of the
Kelley, the talkative Harkonnen.
yeah, there you go.
It's a very short skit. It only lasts about 30 seconds, and it involves my brutal death.
You get thrown out of the dragonfly midair into the sandworm's mouth. Yep, this movie, it even has Sarlacc pits. George Lucas, you're on notice. We know.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Good artists borrow, great artists steal. So, there's Star Wars is amazing, and I have a really good time with it. I might be sacrilegious for my fellow Star Trek fans, but I fucking love both. I don't think I can love Star Trek, Star Wars, and Dune, and fucking I enjoyed the Stargate movie. I haven't seen the series. Sci-fi is cool when it's done well, and now we're at that time where I guess we should just go ahead and talk about it. So, what did you think of the movie? Would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
You really want to do this? Here. Now? Yes. Okay, let's do it!
This movie or Dune Part 1 and Part 2 together?
I mean, can you really separate them? Because
you
Part
really
2 by itself...
Yeah,
Part 2 by itself would suck. Part 2, because it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Part 1 by itself kind of sucked because it didn't really... It just set a stage. It was a prologue.
How about this? I'll give 2 thumbs up, and they're glued together, and you shouldn't separate them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I would have just straight up given it a single thumbs up, because it is perfect. That's why, like I said, when we talked about this, I didn't want to do Dune Part 1 as a pod, because with the entire time we'd be talking about what's coming in Dune 2. There would be... There's some to talk about, but all those answers we would have would be in Dune 2. Is Paul going to be the Messiah? What kind of Messiah is he going to be? We've got a pretty good idea of that now, and that feels like a story. So, yeah, I'm with you. That if there were 2 thumbs to give out in this, I would give it 2 thumbs up together. But either
it's a
one
package
separate
deal, people. You got to watch them together. Not one sitting, because you're not a psychopath and you have something better to do.
People do Lord of the Rings extended cut things where they do all 3 of them in one day at their house and they throw a party, and I'm like,
sure, no, I get it. I get it, but I've done a Star Wars marathon before. Before Episode 7 came out, me and a bunch of friends got together and we watched all 6 from the night before, leading into the day, and then when we watched Episode 7, it was really cool. But I am also a broken, crazy, obsessive person. So At least break it up into 2 separate days if you're just an average Joe and you work and you have kids.
Too much spice and you'll start talking to Jins like Paul and you'll think
Right.
that you're a white savior and you'll start trying to use the voice at work and you'll just get reprimanded for being aggressive and yelling at your office.
And they'll be like, why are you talking like this?
What do you think, you're Batman?
Why are you trashing my scene?
Yeah, I think it was, and you think about only 5 hours. I mean, 5 hours seems like a long time, but if you look at it in comparison to a season of Game of Thrones is 10 hours. So if you could do a half a season of Game of Thrones, this is totally worth it. This tells a more complete story than a half of a season of Game of Thrones does in 5 hours. So
I'll also sit there for 6 hours and deep dive in a video game, so I get it. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which I'm still finishing up my New Vegas run right now. I'm pretty much at the end, and I'm doing everything I can to not finish the game because I don't want to leave the Mojave yet.
I watched this and I immediately started playing Starfield again, just because I wanted.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still on the Fallout kick. After I get done with this, I think I might jump into Fallout 4. But yeah, it's kind of for the listeners, Katie is not here. We will be discussing that at a later moment. But one of the I guess positives for us, but maybe negative for the audience, is without Katie here, we can just ramble about video games and she ain't going to stop us.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But yeah. Anyways, I thought
I do feel we haven't been hostile enough to the listening audience. We should try and up our
yeah, we've been way too polite, and we were getting along and agreeing, and there's nobody going, what the fuck. Well, I did kind of criticize the no shields, but even then I did it with kid gloves on.
I'll do it. I'll take us out, and I won't say bye. That's
You need to leave.
Oh, so you're just gonna leave us hanging? That's how you're gonna end the episode, not saying anything to us? Well, then, I mean, before we get to that point, thank you all for listening to us. Please give us a follow on Facebook and wherever else you see our accounts. Give us a review. We definitely could use the reviews. And we have a Ko-Fi available, which we are going to have a voting system on future episodes where you can buy a vote, because we believe in capitalism. The market decides. And if you are so inclined, you can even pay enough money on our Ko-Fi to force us to watch the movie of your choice.
Oh my God.
Some restrictions, like, nothing too extreme or illegal or anything like that. And we're not promising that we're going to be able to talk nicely about your movie for a whole hour. We might only talk really briefly about it.
My dream is someone pays us to watch a movie that we hate, so they essentially pay us to just talk shit about their movie.
That is a possibility, and maybe that's part of the fun. They'll go, you know what? This movie is absolutely fucking terrible. Me and a couple of my friends are going to get some money together, and we're going to force these motherfuckers to watch this shitty-ass movie and talk about it. And, it might be like High Life. You might get 25, 30 minutes out of us, and that's all we have time for, or it might turn into an extravaganza of us just talking shit about people we've never met.
Also, if you word of mouth, if you have friends that like movies and like hearing about them and talking about them, tell them about us.
Yeah, you're not doing very, very good at this being mean to the audience part. You're sounding way too polite and nice. Katie would not be that nice. She'd tell them, go do something. Stop bothering me. Go live your life.
Fuck your friends and stop listening to us.
Yeah, I don't know if she'd go that far, man. I mean, wow,
Okay, should I
back
dial
off a little bit?
Okay.
Don't turn into Paul Atreides on us now. God, jeez. All right, well, this has been a great time, and looking forward to next week. Next week is going to be my pick. This was just kind of like a little surprise thing. We saw the movie out and we decided to do it. But next week it's going to be my pick, and it is a movie that I guarantee almost every single person that is listening to the sound of my voice has seen this movie before, and I'm so looking forward to talking about it with you. So, without further ado, for Screen Share and Chill, I've been Kelley.
I'm Keith.
See you later.
Bye.
Haha, you said bye. Haha, I knew it.
I'm going to call the police.